Hey everyone, I'm here with Yentl Lega. She's a holistic dietitian and stress therapist, and I'm with her right now, and she's got an amazing presence. She guides hardworking women with autoimmune conditions towards busting stress and boosting your energy for peace of mind and ease of flare-ups without giving up foods. And I can't wait to dive into this. Yentl's got tons of stuff going on for her. She's been in 10 years of working at hospitals and health coaching virtually. You mentioned this word, heart beating people. I love it so much because that's who you're trying to help and communicate your understanding back to them. Where did your journey start? What inspired you to start youunfolded.com?
Yeah, so You Unfolded, it started off as more of like a personal blog in the beginning. It was an outlet for me because I was working at the time as a dietitian, clinical dietitian in the hospital, and studying for my master's in mental health counseling. But I've always been very creative. I love writing. I love reading. I'm a little bit of a nerd that way. I always tell people I don't collect, shoes or purses or anything like that. But books, that's like, yeah, that's my thing. So it was my husband actually who told me, hey, you have a great way of expressing yourself through writing. You could do this through a blog. Why don't you start a blog? And he even would tell me to start a YouTube channel as well, share about nutrition, or one of the things that he told me to share hairstyles, because I used to always have a different hairstyle every day. So he was my inspiration actually to start just being online, because I had no online presence at all. I did not have social media.
It's kind of crazy how developing an online presence is its own journey, as in addition to health. And and you mentioned that you expressed yourself well. When I went to your website and I clicked on your about page, there was all these like blogging awards, and my first thought was, she's putting heart into this. Like, she is drawn to this field of blogging and expressing. It was your husband who kind of, maybe you had it within you, and then that kind of sprinkled some water on those seeds, and it sprouted into youunfolded.com. Just curious, before we kind of dive onto some other topics, what was that initial falling in love process with writing and expressing yourself? What did that look like?
So it started off very tough in the sense of it was me being vulnerable to the world, and I'm an introvert. So, it was tough. That's why I didn't have social media or anything. I mean, to me, it was like, if we're close, you have my number. That was my thought before. So starting off was tough, especially I didn't like talking about myself. So from the beginning, my very, very first post, I talked about forgetting something, which was really funny. I was the one who planned out this event with my coworkers. I sent out the invite, I did the confirmation for it at the restaurant. It was a bunch of coworkers getting together at a restaurant just to hang out, get to know each other. I did all the planning for it, and the day comes, I completely forgot about it. Oh. I completely forgot about it. So the only way I didn't even remember, it was a coworker called me and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "We're all here waiting for you." I'm like, "Oh, great." Oh. So it was that experience that I said, you know what, I need to share this because first of all, I know I'm probably not the only one. And when you have so much going on, this goes back to the whole stress aspect. When you are just overwhelmed and really stressed, even if you don't quote unquote feel it, things like this can happen. And so that was my first post. I said, this is what I want to share, not just to express my story, but I want to show, okay, how can we learn from this? So my first post was about sharing my story and sharing tips on how can you prevent this from happening. So from that very first post, and after getting lots of great responses from that, I realized, I don't want this to just be a creative outlet for me, because I don't necessarily want or need the attention per se. It's more of, how can I use this? How could I use my creativity to reach others and help others? Oh. So that's how it quickly became more of, I called it You Unfolded, is to help people unfold the different aspects of themselves, not just the physical aspect, but also the psychological aspect, spiritual aspect. Let your talents, let your skills, and the things that you don't know you have out. So that way you don't know how you can reach other people with your story and with your skills, your talents, and just expressing yourself.
What did you let out when you first started writing? How would you describe it that you let out?
Yeah. So what I did let out was how I said before, my vulnerability. That was always something that I would keep to myself, even in the beginning of my relationship with my husband, which is funny how he's like a really key factor in all of this. He would always tell me, you got to let me know how you're feeling, because I would be one that would just close myself up. I would just wouldn't want to talk about it. Just let me process it. It's like, I'll process it. But my husband would say, which is so true, when there's a relationship involved, you got to communicate, because how else would they know how they can help you? And that was a big aspect that I was missing. I was so used to being the one doing it all, especially, I think this has a lot to do with being the oldest sibling as well, and feeling like I would take that motherly role with my younger siblings, and in so many aspects of my life, I was always the one who was kind of like the one, right, and taking care of everybody else. So to me, I always thought I have to be the strong one. I can't be vulnerable. I need to be the one that people come to. And being with my husband, he made me realize, like, in a relationship, it's both ways, and you're not superhuman. You need support as well.
Yeah.
So
it reminds me of a similar thing. The words people pleaser come to mind, and the word Marshall Rosenberg comes to mind. I remember reading Nonviolent Communication, and some woman had suddenly realized in the workshop that her anger at her husband was at least partially her responsibility, because she never told him what she needed or wanted. She just kind of was assuming that they would read it. When you started this journey, what did you find, like, how did you say to help reduce stress?
Yeah. So biggest thing is here's a great acronym, because the biggest thing is to ask for help. That's a major one. And an acronym for stress is someone trying to repair every situation solo. And I really loved that acronym, because it's true. It's you think that you can do it all, but we can't. We need each other's support, because we're naturally social beings. We need that connection, to have connection, whether it's intrinsic, because yes, you need to also be connected with yourself and know yourself, but you can't really learn to do that without also learning how to connect with others. It's not a solo venture.
Yeah. And so did writing heal you? Like when you started writing about stress, were you coming from a place of wholeness already where you had already done some work and now you were teaching? Or when you started writing, was it more like hey guys, like I'm new to this whole thing. I'm on a journey too. I'm going to write about it and be vulnerable and share about it. Did writing catalyze your growth journey, or were you kind of already on one and then writing came along?
It catalyzed it. I was kind of, this is the thing with that. I was book smart about it. You can know all the things like psychology and counseling. This is what you learn, da da da. But you don't really know what is going to work for you because you learn a bunch of theories, which are great. It's great to know the theories, but the practice of it is very individual. So even though I knew, or I thought I knew what the right steps were to take and how to reduce stress this way and that way, I was more of expressing from the place where I was. This is where I am right now. This is what has worked for me so far or worked for others that I've expressed this to. So it was more of starting the blog and starting to write about where I was at that moment is what catalyzed me being able to focus more on stress management, becoming more of a stress therapist as opposed to, any other. I mean, there's so many different types of therapy, but yeah.
Absolutely. What are your best ways to alleviate chronic stress? You mentioned, maybe you could just give a big picture about how someone needs to think about reducing stress. I really, really like how you talked about you're alone, basically, that the stress acronym, someone trying, how did it go again? I
trying
loved it. Everyone by themselves, or I felt it.
So someone trying to repair every situation solo.
Yeah.
I know it seems a little long, but when you look at it written, it makes sense.
Yeah. Like I know just people, maybe the theory of stress and in my own life, it's when I feel like I'm taking on everything. I have to do it alone. It's really hard. I feel like that's maybe, I don't know, 50%, 70% of the whole, how do you alleviate chronic stress? Like what's the whole picture? Maybe that's like a big part of it. What are some other aspects of it?
Yes. So stress, when you look at what the American Psychological Association defines the types of stress, it's acute stress, episodic acute stress, and chronic stress. So it's kind of like, okay, so stress is just stress. It really is. It's physiological. So there's only one way to really determine it, but it is multifaceted in how it affects you. It can affect you physically because it starts off being a physical thing, but it can also affect you emotionally. It can affect you psychologically. And psychosocially, how you react with other people, and psychospiritually as well. Now, the interesting part is that we feel it in different levels. What a misconception is that, oh, I don't feel stressed, like I don't feel anxious or worried, so I'm not stressed, so I'm good. But your body can have a stress response, or the way you're interacting with people, it's a symptom that you're stressed. Or even, the way that you are feeling now, having a lack of faith or a lack of purpose, you're feeling like that. That's a sign of stress that's appearing in the spiritual aspect. So it's all the same in terms of what it is physiologically, but your body doesn't know the difference between good and bad stress. So even if you feel like you're fine, if it's chronic or if it's constant, then it can still have all these other effects that are not so great for your whole well-being.
Yeah, I'm imagining, here in Silicon Valley, a lot of people, they're busy.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not aware that they're anxious as well.
Right.
But,
yeah.
But they're stressed, even though, maybe they're not outwardly stressed or as visibly, they're being productive.
Right. Yeah. Personally, I am guilty of that. I myself have said before, I feel fine. I don't feel stressed. I'm good. But physically, that's during the time that I call it my year of hell. It really was.
I was wondering what got you started, by the way, too. This year of hell?
Yes. So I was working full time. And I was a master's student full time. At the same time, I was doing my internship, which was 21 hours, which is funny. It's such an odd number, but 21 hours a week. So I was seriously leaving the house when it was dark and getting back when it was dark. And I barely had any breaks in between. It was just the break was traveling from one place to the other. So I was feeling like how you just mentioned it perfectly. Like people in Silicon Valley think I'm being productive. I'm just staying busy. I'm doing my thing. I'm hustling. That's how I felt. I'm like, I'm hustling. This is my hustle time. I'm in hustle mode. And I felt, emotionally, I didn't feel emotional or moody or, the things that you think is stress. But I did, funny enough, I started seeing a dermatologist because my face broke out in a way where it was, I couldn't even use soap to wash my face. Like it was so irritated. It was inflamed. It was red all the time and inflamed to where it would even hurt to touch. And anything that I would try to, wash my face or whatever, it just irritated. So I was seriously just washing my face with water and honey. That was the only thing that I could use at the time. So I went to a dermatologist because I'm thinking this is a physical symptom.
Yeah.
So going to the dermatologist, he did all his, oh my gosh, what's it called? I always think of triage, but it's not triage.
Or whatever.
No, when they check your blood pressure, all the biometrics. There you go. I was like, it just left me. But yeah, he checked my blood pressure, he checked my pulse, and then he looked at me and he's like, how are you even here now? You are so chronically fatigued. Like, how are you even able to get up? And he said he felt that my heart rate was so low that it was like someone that shouldn't even be walking, basically. So he said, but your symptoms are showing that you have chronic fatigue. And it's funny, I didn't feel tired in that sense, because I was pushing through. I'm like, hey, I'm doing my thing. This is natural for me to feel a little bit tired, but I was staying focused. And that's when I realized that it's stress can still affect you. It's not, you don't have to necessarily feel any negative emotions towards it. It could be there because of your lifestyle. Sometimes even with happy things, like say planning a wedding, you could feel, your heart rate going up and feeling a little anxious and excited, those butterflies in your stomach. That's the stress response. Stress has, like, when we think of stress, it has like automatically a negative connotation to it, but it's a natural physiological reaction. It's having it be chronic and constant that is a concern. It's what we don't want it to be.
How did you not shift gears, perhaps that's not the right analogy, but you being, my word was people pleaser, but someone who was there for other people, really common for therapists too. Therapists are drawn to that field of being other people. So I'm not too surprised to hear that. And Hello, hi. Recovery people pleaser here. Hey. Yeah, it's been my own journey. I'm curious about yours. So you go to the dermatologist's office, and it's mainly because your face, but then you learn, oh, I got stress issues going on. From there, you start writing about it, and maybe you can tie these two questions together, because I bet they go together. But you got a lot of blogger nominations. You got like a lot of them, and I'm betting that maybe some of the insights that you used from that dermatologist's office to turn your life around in terms of stress. I bet like some of those stories or journeys you've shared on some of those like blogger stories. Kind of asking two questions at once here. I'm just going to lob it over to you and see what you come up with, you know?
What was the question?
Okay, the question is, which blogger nomination are you most proud of and why?
Wow. I would say the most inspirational blogger award. That one actually came from somewhere in the UK. So I'm here in the States. I'm in Florida. So I received actually a message from one of my readers, actually. She's the one who nominated me for it, and she's in the UK. So she wrote to me saying, hey, I wanted to let you know I nominated you for this award, and it's for the Inspirational Blogger Award, because you really inspire me with every blog post, and I enjoy reading your posts. And that absolutely touched me, because I mean, like I said, I'm here all the way across the sea, you know. So to hear that someone from, the UK, and on top of that, she's someone whose blog I really liked and looked up to. So that is what warmed my heart even more. So I'm like, here's someone that I admire. And I loved the aesthetics of her blog, and I loved her writing style. I mean, like I said, she's someone that I looked up to. To hear that she, felt that way about me, it was mind blowing. So that one,
We disconnect. Damn. Are we still here?
I would say all nominations from readers.
Oh,
I still hear you.
Okay, cool. The screen froze for a second. I'll edit that out. I don't know. I'm back. But yeah, I'll edit that out. I'll try to make it work. Yeah. Wow. Holy crud. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the power of the internet.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And that's what turned me around to seeing social media differently, like how I said before, my initial thought was, if we know each other, we have each other's number, but I realized there are ways that you can make connections with people, real connections. Because I mean, there are some people that are not really being genuine, we know that. That's a big aspect of social media too. It's just not very genuine.
Where can people find you?
So Yentl Lega, you can find me as my name, first and last name, in Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well. And my website would probably be a good hub. That's where I have all of those. I'm also on LinkedIn, but I opened, it's funny, I opened everything when I started my blog, because I kept reading and people say you have to be everywhere. So now I'm kind of like, I'm not really, to be honest, on social media often. So where people can connect with me a little bit more would be through my newsletter that I do send out consistently every week. That's how I keep in touch with all my readers. But I also have a Facebook group for women who, I call it the balanced beauty community. It's for women who have really busy lives and just want to find small ways that can make a big difference in reducing stress in their lives. So they can find me.
And on your website, you had a 5-day fresh start challenge, which was an interesting way on how to connect with people. I loved it. You got, if you go to your website, you have, I think, different breakthrough sessions. You got different, a prioritize you program, and then this free 5-day fresh start challenge about waking up in the morning. What's that like?
Yes. So studies have shown that the most important and most vulnerable times of your day are the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes of the day. Those are that's the time of the day that can really set the tone for how you feel in general. So yeah, of course, it makes sense how you begin your day and how you end it. So I figured the best time, especially because that's what worked for me during this year of hell that I was talking about before, is how you start off your day. You know, what are the small things that can help start off your day already with less stress, already with more energy to go into it. Because stress, that's another thing. Stress is when you're putting too much attention on different things and you don't end up having enough energy for what you want for the day. So that's what the Fresh Start Challenge is. It's going over 4 very simple health habits that you can start first thing in the morning, no matter how busy your day is, because each of them will take less than 10 minutes. I mean, some of them maybe just a minute or 2.
Interesting.
So
there was a blog article you wrote that was about like the 5 ways to find calm in chaos. There was journaling, greens, movement, pay it forward, and mindfulness.
Yes.
Let's go through topic by topic, and maybe you can share a quote, a story, a lesson, brief thoughts on those 5 things. So like
Absolutely.
journaling, I mean, maybe I'm obviously biased. Sometimes I think journaling is like so obvious, but many people, but I'm biased. I'm a therapist. I'm living, breathing this stuff.
Right.
What do you think about journaling?
Yes. So journaling has a way for you to be able to, again, going back to the energy part, being able to brain dump what is taking up so much of your energy. And just by doing that alone, it can help relieve a lot of pressure off your shoulders, because you might be carrying things that you just needed to let out. And as an introvert, this is so easy. Most introverts are very open to writing because we can speak to a piece of paper more easily than we could to a person face to face. But for an extrovert, this is a great exercise as well, because sometimes there are people that we do, let's say, want to let out emotions to, or a situation that we want to express our emotions out. But we know that if we do, it can harm. And so writing it down is a great way to let that out. And that it relieves you from carrying that burden. And it also saves you from harming yourself, because sometimes, other people may not react the way that would be a way that would make us feel good. And also save you from maybe losing your job or, messing situations up.
I'm an introvert too. And I heard something about extroverts and this surprised me. Extroverts discover what they're feeling through conversation. And that's probably an overgeneralization. Not every extrovert does that and so forth. But maybe journaling, it can be that way. Probably for both people, introverts and extroverts. But I can imagine an extrovert really getting extra benefit out of it because they're discovering it through maybe writing it instead of talking about it. Just a different approach, but kind of the same. You write like you talk, sort of.
Right. Yeah. Usually that's why that exercise, like if it is, let's say, letting out an emotion towards a particular person, let's say, writing it in a letter style, like if you were to send it to that person, that is very powerful, especially for an extrovert.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's good. Like type it out as if you were going to send it.
Right. And you don't have to send it. In some cases, it may not be the best, decision to make, because you may not want to make that connection with that person. It's just, you need to, basically it's for forgiveness for yourself, letting go, and not letting that hurt or anger or bitterness take over, because that person's going on with their lives. You're the one who's still being hurt by it. So yeah, in some cases you don't send it out. It's just doing the exercise as if you were to give them that letter.
What about greens and movement?
Yeah, so greens are a very important one. So this is touching on the physical aspect of stress, because stress is physiological. So greens too are something that is missing in most people's diets. Every time someone tells me, well, I'm eating healthier, it usually involves what they cut out and not what they've added in.
That's true.
And yeah, and very, very few times do I hear greens as part of their routine. So greens are powerful because they're rich in B vitamins, which I always say B for brain, because they're really great for stabilizing your mood. They're really great for brain health, your nervous system. So already it has a calming effect. It has magnesium, which so many studies have already shown how magnesium is great to reduce anxiety and depression. And you find this naturally in greens, in your dark green leafy vegetables. I mean, it's right there in front of you.
Like brain food.
Exactly. And then also there's potassium, which activates serotonin. Serotonin is what is called the feel-good hormone. Mm-hmm. So already it has that calming effect as well. So just by incorporating more greens in your life, you can already start to reduce the stress response in your body.
And I think I heard, what's his name? It was like Michael Pollan or something. And it was just this guy who said, eat more veggies. And I'm pretty sure I think in our gut or whatever in our body, if we're adding foods or we're not all about subtraction, I feel like most of us are like, yeah, I got to eat more veggies.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
Like all of us know it.
Yeah, we know it and we don't do it.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, now that we're kind of killing two birds in one stone, so to speak, stress and health, they go together.
Right. Yes, they do. They do. I mean, it's stress, mental health. I guess stress gets categorized as part of mental health. That is
true. Still
your health. It's we can't separate them. They interact with each other. So it's like you can't treat one without the other.
Mind and body.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Giving. So that one is one of my favorites. I guess because it does come naturally, like to us, but giving, it has the power as well to look outside yourself, because with stress, that's another thing. Apart from you trying to do everything yourself, a part of it too can be you just thinking of you. You're not thinking of, those around you. You're thinking of, okay, I just got to do me. Giving takes you out of that mindset and helps you to see again that you're not meant to be doing this alone, to be able to have an impact, because that's ultimately what most of us desire, is to have some sort of positive impact in this world or something to contribute. But if we think about the I so much, we think about, well, what do I have that I can give to others? What can I, improve on to be able to be a better impact? And it's like, no, you just got to take a moment to see what the need is out there and give what you are able at that moment. And by that simple action, you really start to see, well, it's not about it's not just about me, it's about having that connection and having someone else, feeling gratitude through someone else. When you see someone else, feel thankful or inspired or encouraged by even just a simple word from you, that also does loads for you, because you see, oh wow, I need to just see who is in need. I don't need to just always think of how do I
totally
improve myself.
I'm a Silicon Valley nerd. I remember reading this Google book. I call it the Google book. Search Inside Yourself.
Okay.
Google book. Search Inside Yourself.
Yes.
And the author, I'm going to mess up his name, but Chade something. I think it's Chade. He was talking about a Buddhist concept, mudita, I believe, empathetic joy, which was finding delight and joy in other people's good things that happen to other people, finding joy. So if you were at the cash register at the grocery store and the cash register, was really nice to the person, you'd notice that and say, oh, wow, that cash register, I'm really happy for that other person. And he was saying the key thing was, it was like small. It was 15 seconds or something, just like get in the practice of, you could even just send like a 15-second positive energy burst towards someone, oh man, I'm happy for them that they're having a good day, that they're out on a run while I'm here at work. So it doesn't have to be big either. That story just came up. And that relates to mindfulness, because obviously the SEO book was about mindfulness. Do you meditate personally, or how do you bring mindfulness into your life? Do you just take walks every morning, or do you have a more formal practice? What's mindfulness kind of look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, because that's something that I discuss a lot with a lot of my clients and patients at work, is that meditation or mindfulness is simply an activity that will help you to disconnect from what's around you and focus on the now. And that's why there's so many different forms of meditation and different ways to be mindful. So I always say that you find what that practice is for you. It doesn't always have to be, because a lot of people think, you're sitting crisscross applesauce and, and you're just sitting there. And it's like, oh yeah, that is a form of meditation. It's not like making fun of that at all by any means. But for some people, they're just like, that doesn't work for me. It's like, well, it's just a simple, like you said it too, going out for a walk. Personally, me, what I've been doing a lot more lately, to be honest with you, is playing with my dogs.
Oh, that's a great
one. That's what I've been doing more lately. I'll go outside, especially with our youngest dog. She loves to have you chase her. So that's what I'll do. I'll chase her around our yard. And that's been I'm being present at that moment, enjoying it, being playful,
For sure.
But yeah, I always encourage people to find what that disconnection is for you. And the question I always ask, what is something that you enjoy doing as a way to disconnect or de-stress? And a lot of people have so many different answers to that. And I say, well, that would be your form of meditation. Take a few minutes out of your day to do just that.
And then the last one, I think you touched on it already. They're running around outside, but the last one, movement. Oftentimes, I think movement these days is becoming a different word than exercise, meaning that you're moving your body and like sweating, or maybe just moving your body like exercise. But exercise has this like, no pain, no gain. Work hard till you drop, just keep going, burn out.
No days off.
No days off, yeah. And movement is more kind of like, run around, play with your dog, have fun, make sure you're enjoying it. Is that how you're using it too?
Yes, I like to call it restorative movement. Because one of the things, whenever I ask someone, are you able to be physically active in any way? What do you do? And they'll say, oh, I walk around all day while I'm at work, or I'm on my feet all day while I'm at work. Like, I'm not discrediting that that is physical. However, it's not a restorative movement, because at that point in time, you're not focused on the actual movement. You are focused on the work. So your stress levels are not being lowered. They're probably heightened at that point. So the type of movement that you want to do is intentional movement. The movement that is actually restoring your energy levels, that is actually reducing your stress levels, and that it's not adding to it. So that's why the whole no pain, no gain, that may work for some people. But if you're someone, especially since I work with women with autoimmune conditions, you're wanting to reduce the inflammation in your body, and stress is something that is very pro-inflammatory, and it's not ever addressed. They usually tell you got to stress less, and they're like, really, how? So doing these restorative movements is key to reducing your stress and replenishing your energy level. So you're not finishing the exercise or the movement, if you will, feeling depleted.
Yeah.
You actually feel refreshed.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I had one topic I wanted to bring up that came up here. Have you heard of eustress? Kind of starting this new topic. Have you heard of eustress?
I haven't. No, I haven't. What is eustress?
I'll have to send you a link afterwards. It's
okay.
There's probably some TED Talks about it or something. It's good stress. And so the way you're using stress seemed like all bad, but this was some research, and there is like tons of stress research about how stress is bad. But it was like, how exercise, for example, when it's done right and everything in a good intentional way, it's still putting stress on your body. So it was like the good type of stress where it's good. I was doing some research about that. I was wondering about what are your thoughts on this? Like this word, kind of like we're getting into what's that semantics here. Maybe this is superficial, but the word stress, if there are good types of stress and there are bad types of stress, how do you know the bad type from the good type?
So it's more of like your response to it, then that's an awesome question. Yes, because stress is just one thing, is basically your body's response to a situation. The whole flight or fight response.
Yeah.
That's what your body's physiologically doing. It's releasing adrenaline and cortisone, which cortisone is considered the stress hormone.
Interesting.
So that's when you experience like the heart rate increasing, your breath also starts to go a little bit faster, more rapid breathing, and your energy levels for that moment are kind of like heightened. Yeah. Like you think of adrenaline, you already know what that means. You already feel it. So yes, that's what stress is.
That is such a good answer. That is such a good answer. I love it. That is how you tell it. It literally is a different chemical. It's how your body responds.
Right. It's actually what your perception of it is.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it good or bad.
Interesting.
So like I mentioned earlier, you can have a stress response to just walking down the aisle, but it's a good source because you're just excited and it's a little nerve-wracking, but in a good way. As opposed to like there's situations where like a wild coyote is coming after you, that's like, okay, that's not a good feeling. So stress is the same in your body. It's the perception of it that makes it good or bad. So I have seen more videos coming up talking about the good stress, but it's because of that. It's your perception of it that can make it work for you, and not against you.
Yeah. Incredible stuff that's coming out with the mind, and how if the mind, perceives it a certain way, that the body responds. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. That's it. We had a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. It's my pleasure. Thank you too for having me.
Absolutely.